Welcome to Apologetics and Prophecy, the official podcast of Calvary Solid Ground, a remnant church in Orangevale, California. I am Pastor Jed, and I will be your host as we bring you Bible studies and updates put through an apologetical and biblical lens to see just how close we are to the return of our Lord. Thank you for joining us today. Maranatha, everyone. So glad that you could join us for this Friday edition of Apologetics and Prophecy, where we're going to have a prophecy update in just a minute. But again, I want to continue to advertise what you can see right here, which is the book that we are producing. We're just beginning production on it. And here's a little video that I want to continually advertise to let you guys know that this will be available very soon for you to download or to purchase or to receive. If you can come meet up with us, we'll make sure you get a copy somehow or another. Well, as you can see, there was a lot of work put into this. Our little church family came together, and just to let you know that we actually believe, our church, we believe, because we believe what the Bible says, that there will be a rapture of the church before judgment is poured out upon the world. We believe it so much that we took the time and the effort to produce something to leave behind for the people that will be left behind. And as you can see, we tried to make it with this coil right here and make it look like an official document. And we have it. It's really large print, and it's made to withstand weather. It is a we've had to put this together ourselves to bring the cost down, to have the cheapest wholesale. I mean, we're talking to make thousands of them was $15 a piece, and we just can't pay that much. So the church we decided that we're going to start producing them ourselves, punching the holes, doing this, printing. We bought printers to print. We had the covers custom done by a local print shop. We're putting the effort into these things produce as many as we can by hand to get out to all the people that we know need some. We've just been playing around with it. We've made maybe 30 or 40 of them already by hand, and you pass those out to our local congregation. But we are going to start mass producing them as much as we can. So be in prayer that people will get the hang of it, that we'll find a way that we can get them together. Right now, it takes about 20 minutes to produce one book, 10 minutes to print, and 10 minutes to punch the holes and bind it. So, but you know, if you have 5-10 people doing them, and the printers, we can produce, like 18 an hour. So you can imagine that, with enough volunteer time and just hanging out and fellowshipping, we could probably produce quite a bit in no time at all if we put our hands and elbows to it. So we're going to get going on it. We want to make them available to you. We are working on a website that will have information on all the different aspects of this and how you can download them yourself and print and make your own binder and make it look official. Put it with your important documents. Throw it out on your counter. Have them in your family's house. Hide them in your family's house. I'm going to actually put one of these in my trust for my unbelieving family members. If I disappear, they're going to have to read this in order to get what's in legally in that trust. So you could do it. And so that's what we're going to do. And then just building on what we've been talking about the last couple weeks, this third week installment, this week's prophecy update is going to be, what part of the days of Noah did you not understand? We started with, what part of no one knows the day and the hour did you not understand? The Hebraic mystery festival, date setting, and New Year's date setting. Now it's September 20. Every September, every year now, we've got these dates that are being set. Now Trump's speaking before the UN on the September 23rd. Oh boy, they're going to make a big deal about that. But the point is that we're not to know the day and the hour. But that does not mean that we don't know what the last days look like. And last time we looked at, the first thing that Jesus said is, do not be deceived. There's a great deception coming. And we talked about what part of a great delusion did you not understand? Well, this week, what part of the days of Noah did you not understand? And Jesus said plainly what the world would look like before he came in Matthew 24:37 through 39. But as the days of Noah were, so will also be the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark, they did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Now, I believe that is referring to the rapture of the church, because the judgment, the tribulation period, is going to come upon the world that's going to be thinking peace and safety, and war, famine, and death is going to come quickly upon them, unexpectedly, right after those that were carried away before the flood came, Noah and his family, the church, safe in the arms of Jesus. And so that's what we believe. But what did the days of Noah look like? We're told in Genesis 6:5 and 11 through 12, then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. And the earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. So God looked upon the earth, and indeed it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted on their way on the earth. So if anybody wants to tell you that, oh, there were some saved people that drowned in the flood. I heard somebody say that one time, and I was just like, I almost spit out my dentures that, that somebody that calls himself a theologian would actually say something as stupid as that, when the Bible tells you that everybody was unsaved. The only way to be saved was to get on the ark. And because they laughed at Noah, laughed at what God's judgment was coming, just like Jesus said, they were all taken away, and they are not saved. There aren't anybody justified by faith that went through the flood. I'm sorry, that didn't happen, because the Bible tells us that all flesh had corrupted their way on the earth. And of course, Romans tells us what, when we have this threefold downward slide of humanity into sin that reveals the wrath of God through the unrighteousness of men. At the closing of Romans chapter 1, it says in verses 28 through 32, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to what? A debased mind, a mind that cannot be tested. It's the only thing it's good for is to be thrown away. That's what that word debased means. To do those things which are not fitting, being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. They are whisperers, biters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things. Boy, I'm just glad we don't see that nowadays, right? Disobedient to parents, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful, who knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but approve those who practice them. So it's very clear. Is that what we see in the world? What kind of world are we living in right now? Is it the days of Noah? I think so, especially since this is a pretty fresh story, and it's a recurring story that's happening a lot ever since 2020, and that is at least 2 dead and dozens injured in Minneapolis shooting, including children, U.S. media. And of course, at least 2 people are dead and more than a dozen injured after a shooter opened fire at a Catholic school in Minneapolis on Wednesday, officials told U.S. media. CBS said 15 children were being treated in local hospitals. Local radio reported several were in critical condition. Well, of course, that's the news that we heard on Wednesday. And then, of course, Thursday, more news came out like this one. Videos linked to Minneapolis shooter suspects show anti-Semitic, anti-Israel messages. Well, go figure, you know. Alleged shooter posted videos showing weapons with the slogans "Burn Israel," 6 million wasn't enough, and references to the 2018 Tree of Life shooter, ADL says. The suspect in Wednesday's mass shooting at a Catholic school in Minneapolis, Minnesota, posted videos that included anti-Semitic and anti-Israel messages, according to the Anti-Defamation League. Authorities have reported the suspect, who died by suicide at the scene, as his name is Robert Weston. He goes by he's a transgender, and of course, Times of Israel used his transgender name, which is unfortunate. He was 23. 2 children, aged 8 and 10, were killed, and 17 others were wounded when the attacker opened fire on students, including mass at the Catholic school, authorities said. The assailant fired dozens of rounds through the church windows at students sitting in church pews, then died by suicide, officials said. So we have, of course, there was this meme that came out that Olivier Melnick had out, and that 6 million was not enough, you know, on his weapon that he used to kill kids and shoot kids. You can see the "Burn Israel." Jew hatred doesn't stop with Jews, you know, so we need to be aware. That's what Olivier is saying. And here's some more pictures of the gun. 6 million wasn't enough. And then, you know, there was some profanity I had to clean up off the picture. And then there's this one, pictures of the confused gentleman that was, and you can see where it says, "Where is your God?" And that's, you know, what they were saying. And then "Israel must fall" on the top of his gun. And so this is the kind of people. This guy was a transgender, and I don't normally will play a long clip like this, but I found this yesterday, and it was Jesse Waters' clip on this and this recurring problem. And Jesse Waters does such a good job pointing out what people will not say and how people are covering it up that I thought we would play it. So here we go.
A suicidal transgender who hates Trump's Christians and Jews shoots up kids at a Catholic school, and the media wants to take away your handgun. So how are we supposed to protect ourselves from trans shooters? The media is bad at pattern recognition. We aren't. Just 2 years ago, another trans 20-something walked into a Christian school in Nashville with a rifle and shot 3 kids and 3 adults. They buried the manifesto and locked down the case. We've seen trans shootings in Colorado and in Maryland. They even shot up an ICE facility in Texas. And it seems like half of Antifa's trans. A couple of they-thems just got popped for firebombing Teslas. The mayor of Minneapolis says you can't say that.
Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity. We should not be operating out of a place of hate for anyone. We should be operating from a place of love for our kids.
I don't hate anyone who thinks they're trans. I feel sorry for them. But statistically, the trans population has been prone to violence. That's not villainizing, that's reality. And if you can't recognize reality, you're in danger. We love the American people, especially American children. And if they're troubled and believe they're somehow a girl trapped in a boy's body, we want to get them help. We don't want to give them hormones and operate on them. Society shouldn't be trying to produce more trans kids. We shouldn't be encouraging an emotional disorder or whatever this is. And doctors should stop profiting from it. Great Britain ended child sex change surgeries. They said it's barbaric, and they're right. And politicians should stop elevating the trans issue like it's the civil rights struggle of the 21st century. You see it all over Minneapolis.
Minneapolis will continue to be a safe haven for our trans community.
For being a safe haven for transgender individuals.
We have sued them for gender-affirming care. Yes, we are not going to scapegoat our transgender community.
When our children tell us who they are, it is our job as grown-ups to listen and to believe them.
So when your 9-year-old tells you he's a horse, do you let him sleep out in the barn and eat hay? What are we doing here? Just a few years ago, the psychiatric community classified transgenderism as a mental illness. Then doctors went woke and removed it as a condition, and now millions of young Americans are identifying themselves as trans and getting high fives. When someone has an illness, we should treat it instead of affirm it. We don't celebrate schizophrenia. We don't encourage depression. Teenagers are confused. Sometimes these things are just a phase. And if they're not, all right, then a grown man can wear a dress. If he wants to do that in America, he has that right. We're a pretty darn tolerant society. But the left's weaponizing trans kids and turning them into culture warriors. And they've been turned loose against the church, schools, and Trump. You see it, I see it. The trans clan has a militant wing, and it's out for blood. They're taking lives, defiling churches, and freaking everybody out. And some politicians are doing more to protect shooters like Westman than soft targets like schools. In 2023, private schools in Minnesota begged Governor Walz to fund more school safety. They told him it was an urgent and critical need. Minnesota had an $18 billion budget surplus, but the governor didn't do it. Instead, he turned Minnesota into a trans sanctuary. And his attorney general, Keith Ellison, sued Trump so they can keep castrating little boys. Tim Walz failed. Our leaders keep failing us. They failed us during COVID, on trade, on immigration. They say they care about kids, but they locked them down and oversaw an obesity and chronic disease epidemic. And now there's a growing trans epidemic, and they won't even admit it, just like crime. They created a crisis and then lie about it and blame you for not being compassionate. But their fake compassion is getting people killed.
I couldn't have said it any better. Now, didn't we dodge a bullet? Can you imagine if that guy was our vice president right now and people complain that we get involved in politics to make sure that we don't have somebody like that in charge of Washington? And it's just insane. And I couldn't have said it any better than himself. But as he said, there was a growing pattern. This meme came out. If you notice, there's a pattern here. All of these different shooters identified as trans. And this is an ongoing thing. You know, they're turning people violent. And are they coming out and, defending those that have been getting hurt. No, they come out and they double down to attack Christians like Jen Pesky, who said prayer does not bring these kids back. Enough with the thoughts and prayers. Remember, we've seen that before. Jen Pesky spins Minneapolis church school shooting to attack on prayer. And so that's what they do. They come after us. They say thoughts and prayers is not enough. We got to get rid of all the guns and shut down those evil churches that are causing people to, we're the instigators because we made them so upset that they came and shot us. That's what they do. It's just like the days of Noah, if you ask me, especially this transgender, transhumanism stuff. And it doesn't stop there. This story here, teenage shooter of Colombian presidential hopeful sentenced to 7 years. 7 years. It's not just a United States thing. It's a global thing. It says a 15-year-old shooter who attacked Colombian presidential candidate Miguel Uribe has been sentenced to 7 years in juvenile detention. The right-wing politician was shot in the head during a campaign event in June and died on August 11th after multiple surgeries. The teen was charged with attempted murder rather than homicide due to legal restrictions involving minors. Videos of the June attack show Uribe being shot 3 times before collapsing. 5 other adults have been arrested and charged with aggravated homicide related to the incident, but the motive behind the attack remains unclear. I bet you I can guess. I've got a 3-letter acronym that might have something to do with it. It's called CIA, or maybe NSA. I don't know. Maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe that's just a conspiracy. But, whenever you see these right wing and these lone gunmen and shooters that are, we don't know what the motive was. Come on, we do know what the motive is. And it's just like the days of Noah, the violence that we see. And what about, all the corruption and stuff that we read about in Romans 1? Trump calls for RICO charges against Soros over protest support. We've been talking about this, and it's about time it's coming out into the news. And it says President Donald Trump is calling for billionaire George Soros and his son Alex to face racketeering charges, accusing their network of funding protests across the United States. President Donald Trump escalated his attacks on George Soros on Wednesday, urging federal prosecutors to bring racketeering charges against the billionaire philanthropist and his son Alex. In a sharply worded post on Truth Social, Trump accused Soros of supporting organized efforts to fuel violent protests nationwide. George Soros and his wonderful radical left son should be charged with RICO because their support in violent protests and much more. Although throughout the United States of America, Trump wrote, we are not going to allow these lunatics to rip apart America anymore, never giving it so much as a chance to breathe and be free. Soros and his crazy group of psychopaths have caused great damage to our country. That includes his crazy West Coast friends. Be careful. We're watching you. Thank you for your attention in this matter. And of course, we know and talked about Alex and George Soros. They were the ones that were funding and paying the protesters to go out. This has been completely uncovered. We know what Soros has been doing, and I'm glad. I would hope that something would happen, but we know that probably nothing will. And of course, the more exposure of the evil that is, and the evil intent of man's heart that's evil continually and wicked and violent, of course, came up with this. Gates Foundation cuts ties with Arabella Advisors dark money network. Now, this is very interesting because right before Trump made that statement about Soros and going after Soros, and this announcement of Bill Gates pulling his funding out from this deep state dark money company that washes money, he just met with Donald Trump. Immediately after We don't know what Gates was meeting with Donald Trump about. It was a closed-door meeting, and then the next thing you know, he says that about Soros, and then Gates comes out and pulls out his funding of this this company. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has ended its support with Arabella managed funds, signaling a major shift away from a powerful Democratic-aligned financing hub. Now, if you remember, if you've been watching Billy Crone's, Global Elites, he goes into this whole Arbella thing, and it's used as a hedge company that funds and buys all of this farmland and all of this. It's an evil, wicked system that was exposed in Billy Crone's recent documentary. The Gates Foundation has quietly severed its financial relationship with Arbella Advisors, a leading manager of left-leaning dark money funds that channel large sums into Democratic-aligned causes. The New York Times reported. An eternal June 24th announcement obtained by the Times revealed that the foundation would no longer fund nonprofit vehicles administered by Arbella. While the memo avoided direct mention of politics, foundation officials said they sought to strengthen ties with program partners more closely aligned to their mission. Teams are increasingly working directly with programmatic partners, organizations that are deeply embedded in the communities we serve and closely aligned with our mission, the message stated, according to the Times. As we look ahead, this is a chance to build a deeper, more durable relationship with those partners and to reinforce a kind of legacy we want to leave behind. Yeah, I'm not buying any of that. Founded in 2005 by Eric Kessler, a Clinton administration veteran and former staffer with the National Democratic Institute and League of Conservation Voters, Arbella has become one of the most prominent financial networks on the left. The LCV itself has opposed Trump's administration policies and backed Democrat candidates through its related political arm. So, what was USAID, which got shut down, and now Doge is screening through and finding out where all this money went. What it did was USAID gave money and grants to NGOs. The NGOs again funneled that money back to Arbella. Then Clint, these different organizations back to Arbella, and then Arbella turned around and used it to fund politics. So your tax money basically got laundered to go back and support the Democrats. And so it's just wicked and evil, and it's just as it was in the days of Noah, where they had no concern for anything. Their mind, their thoughts, and everything were only evil continually. What about this? Stories like this. Kentucky judge shot dead in courtroom, ran depraved sex ring accuser claims. These are stories that are coming out every day. You can't get away from them. It says a woman has accused the Kentucky judge shot dead in his chambers of running a sex ring from his office, coercing girls into wild sex parties in exchange for keeping them out of jail. Remember, this is all part of the sign. That was one of the problems with Israel. They were taking bribes, and they were doing sick stuff like this, and they were taking advantage of their authorities and places, and God brought judgment. Just like in the days of Noah, it was the same thing. And it says District Judge Kevin Mullins, 54, was killed while in his chambers at Letcher County Circuit Court in September of 2024, allegedly at the hands of Letcher County Sheriff Sean M. Mickey Steins, his close friend. Since the fatal shooting, disturbing claims have emerged about Mullins, including one witness who told police he ran his chambers like a brothel and was seen having sex with a girl inside the office in Whitesburg, around 140 miles southwest of Lexington. So, even the Midwest, the Bible Belt, these things are happening. It's just a sign of the times that we're living in. Then, of course, what about this? Kansas State University civil rights administrator is part of secret Marxist group that says it has no sympathy for dead Jews. Again, act like you're surprised, just like the days of Noah. At a group meeting, the investigator Darren Bordens lamented that the assassination of 2 Israel embassy staffers would not spark a broader movement. those ones that were killed in New York. They were hoping that would spark off a bigger movement of anti-Semitic and violence. Basically, they're saying violence is okay, just like the days of Noah. An investigator in Kansas State University Civil Rights Office, which claims to foster an environment free from discrimination, harassment, and retaliation, is part of a secretive Marxist book club that calls for the total destruction of Israel, hails the terrorist group Hamas, and defends the murders of Israeli citizens. Darren Borders, who joined the university's Civil Rights and Title IX office in May 2024, is a member of the Kansas Socialist Book Club, an anti-colonial Marxist group based in Manhattan, Kansas. The Washington Free Beacon has found. The organization, formed in 2022, has embraced extremist views on Israel over the Jewish state's response to the October 7th attacks from Hamas. In a manifesto last year, the Kansas Socialist Book Club called for the complete and total destruction of Israel and expressed unwavering support for Hamas. So again, and then does this reach into our government? This might be the schools, the college campuses. We expect that. But here we go again. This is just incredible, this story here. Representative Rashida Tlaib and Muslim terrorists traded for October 7th hostages to appear at same event. It's just incredible. 2 Palestinian terrorists are set to speak at the Detroit People's Conference for Palestine at the end of August, including Tanzim, a Tanzim operator who was released in February in return for hostages held by Hamas and a former Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine official. Shaheen was released on February 1st along with hundreds of other terrorists as part of a deal in exchange for live and deceased hostages captured by Gazan forces during the October 7th massacre, according to Israeli Justice Ministry and Palestinian Prisoner Society announcements. So, why are we even allowing them in our country? These people, all they do is think of violence. To them, October 7th was a perfectly legitimate thing to do, just like in the days of Noah, where violence filled the earth. And we're seeing violence fill the earth. It's a daily occurrence, you guys. And what about, in cities across Europe where there's Jewish embassies? This is what's happening. Can you imagine if they had real weapons? They would, they might have been using fireworks, but what if they were, bazookas, or tanks? They're going to blow the, just because they are using fireworks doesn't mean that they don't want violence. And of course, this whole immigration thing and this stuff that's happening with Islam in the UK is really bad. This next story, experts predict a civil war in UK, and there is no political solution. No solution at all. It's just incredible. It says in a recent interview, Richard Kemp, an expert on security, intelligence, and counterterrorism and defense, issued a stark warning. The more it develops, and it is going to develop more and more, the more unrest we're going to see. I would go as far as to predict not just civil unrest, but civil war in the UK in the coming years. I would hate to be right on this, but I believe I know there is no political solution. At MCC Fest in Hungary, Connor Tomlinson sat down with former British Army Colonel Richard Kemp to ask what the main threats from the West from within are, why our politicians appear incapable or unwilling to address them, and whether ignoring problems caused by immigration and Islam will bring Britain to the brink of civil war. Kemp issued a stark warning that the United Kingdom is on the trajectory towards civil war due to the failure of political leaders to address a growing threat from an alliance between far-left activists and Islamist extremists. He stated that this alliance, which he believes is fostered and funded by hostile foreign powers like Russia, China, and Iran, poses a significant threat to the nation's cohesion and culture of political existence. Kemp criticized UK politicians for being short-sighted and risk adverse, operating within a horizon of 4 years. Mentally focused on re-election rather than taking the decisive action needed to prevent societal collapse. He emphasized that while he does not encourage violence, he believes the public may ultimately feel they have no option but to take matters into their own hands, leading to widespread unrest and potentially full-scale civil war if the current situation continues. It's pretty crazy. These things are happening, and you know, just like the days of Noah. And of course, what about, you know, technology, transhumanism, this stuff? You know, look at this. AI experts no longer saving for retirement because they assume AI will kill us all by then. Why do you continue to work in the field then? That's, you know, I know a guy that will go on roundtables and talk about the evil of AI and how we need to be aware of how evil it is, yet he makes his living working with AI all day. You know, it's like, okay, let's see. This is bad for you, but we're using it for good. It doesn't make sense. But of course, these people that work in it, they know that it's not good. I just don't expect to be around, is what one of them said. The meteoric rise of artificial intelligence has instilled an existential fear in AI doomers, a subset of people who believe the tech will cause humans to lose their jobs, fall prey to a dominating species of rogue superintelligent AIs, and even eventually get wiped out altogether. And as The Atlantic reports, some are taking that pervasive fear to striking extremes in their daily lives. Machine Intelligence Research Institute researcher Nate Soares, for instance, told the magazine that he's even given up saving for his retirement based on the assumption that AI is already guaranteed the final nail in humanity's coffin. I just don't expect the world to be around, he said. And Center for AI Safety Dan Hendricks told the magazine that he's also expecting humanity to no longer be around by his retirement. Their belief is part of a movement that argues that they're mere years away from an AI that evades our grasp and turns against us. A kind of dystopian face that's yanked straight out of the pages of a harrowing sci-fi novel. But it's not looking like pure fiction anymore. Numerous experts have warned that we aren't sufficiently preparing for such an eventuality, dooming us to be subjugated or worse by a super intelligent AI. Now, AI is not going to be the end of us. God's going to be the end of us as he judges mankind for putting their trust in these things and trying to be God and not calling out to God. And that's what the problem is. And then, of course, there's this. Of course, this is like the days of Noah. Scientist warns that new synthetic life form could spell doom for humankind. Again, we're seeing this continued theme. Doom for mankind. The end is near. And all of this. It's a technology that doesn't even exist yet, but its effects could be so drastically destructive that scientists in the field are calling for it to be banned now, before it's too late. We're talking, of course, about mirror life, synthetic organisms that quite literally turn natural biology on its head. Let's see. There might not be anything like a 2020 and 2021 global experiment on humanity that came from a synthetic code that they made people that made a state-approved treatment. Yeah, you know, that's exactly the same thing they're talking about here. It says we should choose not to build mirror life and pass laws to ensure nobody can. John Glass, a synthetic biologist, again, another guy crying out the alarm, but still works in the field. You know, a synthetic biologist who helped create the first living cell with a synthetic genome, wrote a speculative yet terrifying piece for the Financial Times. The question is not whether we are able to prevent this threat, it's whether we will act while we still can. Mirror life forms contain DNA structures that are the mirror image to all known organisms. In all life on Earth, the DNA double helix is right-handed, meaning it strands a sugar phosphate backbone twist to the right. If you make a thumbs up with your right hand, the vertical axis would be aligned with your thumb, while your fingers represent the curl of the spiral. The opposite is the case for proteins, the building blocks of cells, which are left-handed. This so-called homochirality is true for all known life forms. So what happens when humans engineer a genetic organism where its DNA twists to the left while its proteins twist to the right? The scary thing is that we can't say for sure. Again, they don't know. Well, we know, but many biologists fear the worst. In December, a group of leading figures in the field, including 2 Nobel laureates, published a massive technical report warning that the consequences of mirror life could be globally disastrous, possibly even wiping out all life if the new organisms give pathogenic to existing life like us humans. So again, there we go. They are doing it. It is just like the days of Noah, where they are tampering with the DNA of mankind. And don't think that these things aren't happening. And then we have this story, Planeteer CEO Peter Thiel to lead 4-part series on the Antichrist. 4-part series. Now, this is something that we've been knowing about. This guy is a homosexual, practicing homosexual, that claims to be a Christian, that talks about the Bible and his Christian faith, and tries to, he says that we can intertwine our faith with the technology and transhumanism. It's true. That's what they really believe. Thiel, who is 57, will offer his thoughts on how his Christian faith informs his understanding of the world, including the areas of theology, history, literature, and politics of the Antichrist, as part of a 4-part lecture series at the Commonwealth Club in San Francisco, according to a flyer for the event. Scheduled for September 15th, September 22nd, September 29th, and October 6th, Thiel's lecture will explore the theological and technological dimensions of the Antichrist, drawing upon religious thinkers such as French philosopher René Girard, who Thiel studied under at Stanford University, Francis Bacon, Jonathan Swift, Carl Schmitt, and John Henry Newman. Each lecture, which will not be transcribed or shared with the public, is designed to form a cohesive series, and admission is only offered to the entire lecture series rather than individual dates. The event will also feature a moderated Q&A with Peter Robinson, host of Stanford Hoover's Institution podcast Uncommon Knowledge, and an audience Q&A for attendees who have a chance to engage directly with Thiel. The Acts 17 Collective, a nonprofit dedicated to acknowledging Christ in technology and society, is the organizer behind the event. Now, if you're wondering who they are, here's a picture of their website. And they don't have a statement of faith. They have what's known as a manifesto. If you see the guy right there in the center, you should recognize him. He is an apostate who claims to be a Christian named Francis Collins, who used to be in charge of the NIS. He is responsible for the death of many people, to forcing them and getting churches to get on board to take the death shot. This man is also a person who says that we evolved, and that, people that teach 6 days of creation are wrong, that we need to embrace evolution and embrace science, and it doesn't interfere with our faith. The man is an apostate, and he's leading many people to hell. And this manifesto tells you we're redefining success for people who define culture. Now, Thiel's no stranger to talking about the Antichrist, but just to let you understand that they look at these things philosophically. That's really huge. You have to understand there are people that take the Bible as just another form of a philosophical look at theology, and they put it on par with all of these other people, like you said, these old philosophers, and the Bible's just another thing on the shelf, and they take the look at it, and they're going to have a conversation about the philosophies, and you can see it in this short clip that this is from a few months ago, but I shared it before. But here's a short clip.
But in some sense, the Antichrist as an idea is something that really comes into being in the world after Christ. And so there's And then there's a lot of things about it that are mysterious. In some ways, the Antichrist copies Christ. The Antichrist pretends to be greater than Christ, hyper-Christian, ultra-Christian, and then maybe only ultimately, deeply anti-Christian.
Okay, so you
and then you can think of it as a system, where maybe communism is a one-world system. So it can be an ideology or a system. And then of course you can also think of it as Newman did, where it's sort of the final dictator of the one world state, where it's still, you stress it more as a person. You can think of it as a type, a system, a person. It has something to do in this post-Christian. It's something that's sort of a possibility in this post-Christian world. It is in some ways, and it's related to Christ in a very complicated way. So the theological question you can always ask, is it possible to be too Christian? And in theory, no. But in practice, if you think you're more Christian than Christ, you're in trouble.
He almost gets it. But you have to understand, this man is in unrepentant sin. He is married to another male. That makes him in unrepentant sin, and he cannot be a Christian. He cannot be born again and live in the way that he does. And so his approach to what he calls Christianity is completely philosophical. And so, but we have a world that when the Antichrist comes on the scene, he is going to be the instead of Christ, and it'll have some illusion of where he's like what he's saying. And so it's very interesting, though, that these guys are talking about it. At least it's just you have to understand where they're coming from. And so this last story is I want to this is the act like you're surprised story, but another sign that the days of Noah were marked by wickedness and evil, and we know from the book of Revelation that pharmakia is one of the tools that will be used to control the masses. And so this is the duh story of the week, which I could have told you long before they came out. And that is high THC cannabis linked to psychosis and addiction. I was addicted to pot for 20 years, and the stuff that I smoked is nothing compared to what they make today. The stuff they buy in those pot shops are like 5 times stronger than what I used to smoke. And I was addicted to it. And it is a gateway drug. And it does, can you imagine people being stoned, talking about these philosophies and opening the door to all these possibilities and delusions like we talked about last week? And it says, summary, a systematic review of nearing 100 studies found that high THC cannabis products are linked to negative mental health outcomes, particularly psychosis, schizophrenia, and cannabis use disorder. While some therapeutic research hinted at benefits for anxiety and depression, results were inconsistent and often showed potential harm. The evidence suggests higher THC concentrations carry greater risks, reinforcing concerns about high-potency cannabis use. Researchers emphasize that stronger, better-designed studies are essential to give clearer guidance to patients and healthcare providers. Key facts: psychosis risk. High THC cannabis is strongly associated with psychosis, schizophrenia, and cannabis use disorder. Mixed findings. Some studies suggest potential therapeutic benefit for anxiety and depression, but many show harm. Current research lacks definitive answers, highlighting the need for improved study design. And of course, this comes from the American College of Physicians. This is neuroscience. This is not, this isn't, right-wing, anti-drug conspiracy theory.com. This is actual doctors studying these things and found out what I could have told you a long time ago, that pot is bad. And it is. And of course, do you think these studies are going to stop the reclassification of it, the legalization of it, and the use of it that continues to grow at at these levels that we never thought that we would see before? Of course not, because we know pharmakia will be the thing that will be judged during the tribulation period. So all of these things show us that we are in the days of Noah. Everything from violence to transhumanism to AI to drug use to these biased judges to all of this corruption in world leadership. We've seen it all. This was all a sign of what it was like during the days of Noah. But Luke 17 is very interesting. Jesus said this. He didn't only talk about his return and the rapture at the Olivet Discourse. He answered specific questions then, but he made references to his return and that no one would know the day or the hour of the rapture many times through his earthly ministry. And Luke 17 is one of them. And it says, as it was in the days of Noah, so it will be also in the days of the Son of Man. They ate, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage until the day Noah entered the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. Likewise, as it was in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But the day that Lot went out from Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even so will it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. And what's the picture here? Just like in the days of Noah, where they continued on in life, laughed and scoffed at Noah for 120 years while Noah's building this ark, saying it never rained. You're a fool. God's not going to judge us. We can continue living the way that we are. And God brought judgment. And what happened? That Noah escaped in the ark while the rest of them stayed and died in the flood. What about Lot? Lot was removed from the evil wickedness of Sodom and their violence before the flood of Noah and sexual perversion that we saw at the beginning of our update, which is taking over the world, just like the days of Lot. But Lot was removed from Sodom and Gomorrah, and the people that were left behind were destroyed for judgment. And you have to understand, that's the case that's being brought up as he continues on in verses 31 through 36. In that day, he was on the housetop. His goods are in the house. Let him not come down to take them away. And likewise, one who is in the field. Let him not turn back. Remember Lot's wife. You guys need to remember that. Remember Lot's wife. Lot's wife looked back, longing for the things of this world. Are you longing for the things of this world, or are you longing for the return of Christ? I want these books to be left behind for people so they don't get deceived, so they don't take the mark. They might have to go through the tribulation period, but we don't. And we're going to be delivered from it. But, I'm not so grabbing onto, so longing for the things of this world that I'm looking back for it. That's the picture, remember Lot's wife. And he goes on to say, whoever seeks to save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life will preserve it. I tell you that in that night, there will be two men in one bed. The one will be taken, the other left. Two women will be grinding together. One will be taken and the other left. Two men will be in the field. That one will be taken and the other left. Now, this is a global phenomena. This is a global phenomena. That means there's going to be people taken during the night, during the morning, and during the day. That's the idea. And how can that be if it's nighttime in one place on the earth? It's going to be morning somewhere and daytime other. So it's showing this is a global event. And from the context that we read, the people that were taken away to safety, and the ones that were left behind for judgment. And how do we know that? Because the next verse. Because the disciples asked him and said to him, "Where, Lord?" And he said to them, "Wherever the body is, there the eagles will be gathered together." Where, Lord? Those ones that are left behind, the birds will be gathering, like we read about in the supper of the Lord. The ones that are left on the earth dwellers, they're going to be the ones that will be part of the supper of the Lord. The church will be gathered together for the marriage supper of the Lamb. And so there are those that will be left behind. And the eagles and the birds of prey will be flying around as those that are left behind on the earth. They're flying around waiting for their dinner. Those that get left behind for judgment. Those that are taken away for safety. So, like I said at the beginning, what part of the days of Noah did you not understand? Just another sign that we are in the last days. And that means that there is going to be a soon evacuation. God's going to say that's enough. How much longer is he going to put up with this transhumanism, this synthetic life, the violence that's going on in this earth, this anti-Christian behavior? There's going to be a time when he says, that's it, that's enough. I'm taking my bride and we're getting out of here. And then the only thing you can hope for is that you get one of these books and follow its instructions, because the day of our departure is at hand, because it's just like the days of Noah. They think that life is going to continue on. What do we have coming from all our politicians? Peace and safety is coming. But we know that sudden destruction is going to come upon them as a thief in the night. As we are taken away to meet Jesus in the air, that day of darkness will fall upon this earth like a time unlike anything since the flood. And it's going to be a day you do not want to be part of. So if you're listening to this and you do not have a relationship with Jesus Christ, you need to get saved. You need to get saved today, because, man, I'm telling you, time is short. It's just like the days of Noah. You need to understand that no one knows the day or the hour. He can come back today, right now. So you need to cry out to the Lord. You need to ask him for salvation that he offers to you freely. But you got to ask. You got to receive. And you have to receive that which he offers to you. And that's a complete pardon of all of your sins, past, present, and future, through the death and resurrection of his son, Jesus Christ. Cry out to the Lord, and he will save you. Put your faith and trust into that which he did for you, and you will be saved. Ask for the fullness of the Holy Spirit, and he will grant it to you. And then you will be saved. You will be born again, and you will be able to be caught up with the rest of us and be gone for this that is coming. And so, with that said, thank you for watching today. Please continue to stay in touch. We'll let you know we're moving quickly on this, and so within the next few weeks, I'm going to be making a big announcement coming up at the end of September. We're going to have it all available for you to be able to get, and you guys that are our close friends of this ministry, you just let us know, and we'll make sure we get you one, no charge. We'll do that. But for people that want quantities, we'll show you how to make them yourself. We're not trying to make any money on this, you guys. We're spending a lot of money to produce it, but we feel that if it costs us to make sure it gets out there, we don't care. It's not. We're just wanting to make sure everybody has one of these in their house, that we can, as many as we can produce, to get out, because we know that in a moment, in a twinkling of an eye, we're going to be gone, and people need to get saved. There's going to be all of this stuff we've been talking about falling upon the earth, and so we're very concerned, and that's why we're quick, and we're going to be quick to get these things done and get them out. Thank you for watching today. God bless you. And we just cry out. I hope he comes before we get a chance to print these up. I mean, I hate to say that, but, hopefully we can. But if we can't, I'll be glad to be up there with him. So just as we always want to end as we start, just saying Maranatha. If you have been blessed by this podcast, please subscribe and share to help get the word out in these last days. If you'd like more information or to contact us, please go to calvarysolidground.com. God bless you, and see you next time on Apologetics and Prophecy.